Hey everyone, and welcome back to Sasquatch Theory. We're back at it today with another Bigfoot email. I got a fat lip. Somebody finally punched me in the mouth for talking too much smack in the comments. No, not really. I went to the dentist and they replaced a filling, and when I was eating, I bit down on my lip. Luckily, I didn't bite down too hard, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, we have some Bigfoot emails that I want to read off today, and we'll get straight into it, guys. All right, the first email is from Mike and Joanne from Newfoundland, Canada, I believe it is. All right, the title is Newfoundland Story. Hello, my name is Mike, and I'm a subscriber to your channel. I love hearing all the encounter stories and watching your YouTube channel. I'm a Bigfoot believer. So after hearing the story from Newfoundland, here's a story of my own. I'm from Newfoundland and grew up in Newfoundland, Trinity Bay, and I have an uncle that lives in Petty Harbor. Anyways, getting to my story, I was about 7 years old, and it was in the early 1990s. I was sitting around in my kitchen with my family, and it was dark outside. We had a porch built onto the house that we would keep wood on. So that porch door was open and the main door to outside was shut. The main door had 3 teardrop windows built into it. It was a wooden door. I happened to glance up and I noticed there was a face looking into the window, looking at me or us, but I didn't recognize it. I told my mom, and when I turned, it was gone. I got up and got my boots on and went running all around the house and didn't see anyone or anything. We lived in a quiet little community. We had the ocean in front of us and all woods behind us. It goes for miles. This was my experience, and I'm now 41 years old. After hearing this other story, it got me wondering if there's Bigfoots in Newfoundland, Canada. The place where this happened is Bellevue, Newfoundland. Thanks for reading my story, Mike. All right, thank you so much for sharing your Bigfoot encounter here on Sasquatch Theory, and I believe you 100%. I've taken a lot of encounters where people have claimed that the Sasquatch are looking into the window at them, and they just see a giant head, large face, definitely not human, and it seems like they're super curious. They'll go up to people's houses and look into the windows, snoop around on the porch, and possibly take people's dogs, the dog food. I mean, there's numerous reasons why they come up to people's properties other than just curiosity. People plant gardens and there's just so many reasons. But yeah, I think they're just super curious. But the main question we should ask is, what are their intentions? What are they up to? Why are they doing this? And how often does this happen? Because we hear a lot of stories, but how many times do the Sasquatch look through people's windows and they have no idea? Is this something that's happening every night? Like when people go to bed, they roam around in their yards, on their property, and spy on us? That is frightening, because there's a lot of stories where, not just Bigfoot stories, but like alien stories where it's standing over someone's bed, shadow people, entities, and that's just creepy that when we go to sleep, things like that take place in our homes, and yeah, I don't like it. I've had experiences like that where, I don't know, there's things tapping on the window and you hear, clearly nails clicking on the glass, and that happened multiple times. Something slapped the house one time. It just sounded like a giant hand hit the siding, and it was really loud. I mean, my first thought was like an owl crashed into the house. Yeah, there's just been so many things that have happened around my property. I told you guys about the group of Sasquatch that visited, and I could see the yellow eye shine from the creatures as I was hitting it with the spotlight. And then they were joined up by, a gray one came and joined that group. And that one I did see clearly because it walked through the clearing. But man, I've wondered that myself, and I just don't know why they're coming around people like that. You know, if it's something that wants to stay hidden, undiscovered, live away from mankind, why are they coming around us? A lot of it doesn't make sense. When you really dive into the Bigfoot subject, you start to understand why people are so skeptical and why nobody really looks into this, because logical thinking would say none of this is possible, and that's just not how it would work. But when you look into the Bigfoot subject, have experiences, it will really change your mind, because they can get really close to people and do things that are damn near impossible. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, Mike and Joanne. It really means a lot. And if you guys have any more, definitely let me know. I wish I could live in Canada on the beach with nothing but woods behind me. That would be so cool. I'm sure it gets really cold there, but I bet you guys know how to manage, because it sounds like you've been there for a while. But yeah, thank you very much, and we'll move on to the next Bigfoot email, guys. All right, surprisingly, the next Bigfoot email in the folder is another Newfoundland story, and I think it's the story that the guy was talking about that he heard in the email that I just read off. And I do believe I interviewed this gentleman, but yeah, we'll get into it. The story's from Newfoundland, Canada, and the title is My Bigfoot Experiences, Newfoundland, Canada. Hello, my name is Adam. I am 31 years old, and I am from Petty Harbor in the province of Newfoundland, Canada. I am an avid rock hound and amateur prospector, so I spend a lot of my time out in the woods collecting rocks and taking samples, and I love nature. I guess the first experience I had was when I was 9 or 10 years old. Me and my friends used to enjoy playing Tonka trucks and gathered a huge collection and had turned the cut of bank behind my friend's house into a mine. One day, while playing on top of the bank and behind a few trees and bushes on a little path we made, my friend said to me, "Hey, did you see that?" And I said, "See what?" And then out of nowhere, a rock hit the truck I was using, and we instantly got out of there. And we were too scared to go back for over a week. We never seen or heard anything there since, and at the time, I never attributed it with a Bigfoot encounter. Fast forward 20 years or so, about last year, I moved to a small town called Gander in the middle of the island to pursue my prospecting career with my girlfriend. I have spent many days and nights out around in the Avalon Peninsula of my island in the woods back home. So I am sort of familiar with being in the woods. I have seen black bear and moose, which are our biggest animals on the island. I'm more likely to see a moose than a bear, so I don't really get scared of being alone with no weapons other than a bear banger and bear mace. One day, after we moved to Gander, we decided to drive down to collect some rocks. Our friend, who was with us at the time, said she was down about at the same spot we were going to about 3 weeks prior of our visit, and that she and a friend had seen what seemed to be a bear standing up for about 15 minutes, about 1 kilometer up the beach, and when it had turned around towards them, they got scared and got in their car and left. So at least I knew there was bears possibly around. Still never put 2 and 2 together with Bigfoot, but she did say it was a bear. Looking back now, I think differently. We went down, collected our rock specimens, and left with no problem. Although now I have come to find out the whole area has a lot of weird happenings that have happened. I'll explain later. The area I am talking about is across the street from my house, behind another house, about, 50 meters of woods before it hits the THC 4-lane highway, which is on the other side, and is a giant hill which led to the giant lake beyond that, and its endless woods. The woods beyond the back highway, I won't go back in it ever again. So anyways, I never sleep in. I'm always up at 5:30 a.m., making my coffee and scrolling through stuff on my PC. It was a nice morning, so I decided to open up my front room window, and as soon as I sat down, I heard the loudest, most god-awful sound I have ever heard before in my life. I've heard moose, bear, coyotes, and nothing, I mean nothing, I have ever heard before sounded like it. I listened for about what seemed to be a minute or so. Then I ran, woke up Stephanie. She came out and immediately was also shocked as by what she was hearing. It continued for about 4 or 5 minutes. We were very taken back with what we heard. It sounded scary, but at the time it sounded like something was hurt or mourning for a loss of something. This compelled me to look into what it could have been while she went back to bed. And as I did a bit of research and looking at YouTube videos, it was getting more weird as I couldn't figure out what made the noise until after I found a video labeled "Scary Screams Heard in the Canadian Forest. People Say Bigfoot." As I turned it up loud to hear it better, Stephanie ran out scared as it was the same sound we heard and thought it was back again. I was kind of really scared at this point, and the thought of going across that highway prospect or simply rock hounding was quickly fading out of my mind as I never go with a friend and never went the rest of that season as it was almost over. Fast forward again to this year, it was spring, and after all winter of being stuck outside, I wanted to go rock hunting and prospecting once again. So one day I got packed up with all my gear, got my dog Blue ready. He is a Beagle Shih Tzu mix, looks more like a beagle. I obviously don't have him for protection as he's just a small dog, just some company with his nose. He always lets me know if something is around. Yeah, it's a good idea to bring a little dog like that. Little dogs that are aware are awesome for Bigfoot. I'm serious. I've seen it before. It seems like the smaller ones are better. I don't know why. I mean, I think just the bigger ones are more aggressive, and that makes them that doesn't make them think straight. Like, little dogs stay with you, and they're very good alert dogs. But yeah, that's good. So I left and I went to head to my spot, which was across that highway, then up the high about 500 meters. It was a old ski resort, which I was told was opened in the 80s for about 3 to 4 months, and it closed down for no apparent reason. But the building and anything man-made is gone, minus the concrete and the ski lift foundations. I use the different ski paths to find different rock exposures while rock hunting the area. It was my secret rock hunting piece of heaven until this day. We arrived at the top of the hill, which is next to one of the ski lift foundations overlooking the lake. I noticed there was no hikers, no cars parked this day, which was offsetting as I still had that sound in the back of my mind, but birds were chirping and it was a beautiful day. I jokingly said to Blue, my dog, "Hey, if you smell anything, growl or bark, okay, bud?" He's a good doggo and knows all his tricks, stays next to me without a leash, and never takes off. But as good as he is, I could never get him to stop barking. I guess that's the beagle in him. So about, I don't know, maybe about a kilometer down the hill, the halfway point, I seen a good spot to start. So I unpacked my things and got ready. As I did, Blue sniffed and surveyed the area. The area was square in shape. Blue, when he was done, lay down in the left corner of the side I was working, which was facing the woods. I thought was odd because he wasn't sniffing. Anyways, I got to work finding a good rock to break open and finally found one, but I heard what seemed to be a branch break, which made me uneasy as Blue didn't respond to it as he was still in the same spot, not freaking, just lay down with his head on his paws. I got nervous and attached him to a leash so he wouldn't go at a rabbit if that's what it was. So I continued to break the rock open with the rock hammer. I finally got it open and I was inspecting the inside of the rock, and out of nowhere in the left hand side where Blue was about 100 feet, I heard a strange sound and it really freaked me out a lot. I thought, hey, maybe someone's playing a joke and found another rock to break. I finally got it to open, and as I was inspecting the inside of the rock and found out of nowhere in the left-hand side where Blue was about 100 feet in, I heard a strange sound in that exact same spot, and it really freaked me out. I stopped and I thought, hey, maybe someone's playing a joke and I found another rock to break open. But this time, when I hit it, I did 2 fast, hard hits. As before, I went back to get the next 2 small smacks in, and I heard 2 clanks back, a lot faster than an echo. But this place I was in didn't produce echoes. I said enough of this. I put the rock down, got Blue, ready to go. As I kneeled down to pack my stuff up, I heard what I can only explain to be very loud whistling that I don't know if you ever heard it, but it sounded like the whistling army commandos that make the talk to communicate with each other like bird chirps. But this was coming from the right of us at this point. Blue was still not barking, but crying and hauling on the leash. I had to put on him towards the way home quickly. I snapped 3 photos. I don't know why. I still have the pics still, but I don't think I got anything. But just as soon as I did, I heard a third noise from behind us, the same whistling sound I had heard from the right of us. I quickly finished packing and started leaving, and as soon as we got to the path at the end of that square cutout, the first rock got thrown. I didn't notice how big it was, just the crash. Bang and thud when it landed in the bushes on the opposite side of the path it was. Then I thought to myself, we're getting hunted. I don't know why I did, but I just started running with Blue. As we ran, more rocks started getting flicked. Not small rocks. They were the size of my head or bigger. They were going that fast. I heard the sound of them going past me, and Blue did not stop running the whole way up the half-kilometer hill. I did notice as I was running, I saw 2 fairly sized trees tip over, and something was running alongside us in the brush on the right hand side. It never stopped until about 10 feet from the end. But I never stopped running until I hit the gas station on the opposite side of the highway. I never saw what was doing this, but I do know I am never going back again, and in a way it has ruined the outdoors for me now that I know we are not alone. I am unsure if it was a Bigfoot or some sort of other cryptid, but it's my experience that day and how it happened. Also, since this incident, I have what me and my lady Stephanie call home visits. It started happening, the latest and newest thing to me happened last night. What we call home visits are the strange window taps and back door knocking in the middle of the night. No one knocks on my back door, like ever, especially in the middle of the night. That's only been happening since that day. Also, I should note my house is visible from the opposite side of the highway. It could have seen me go here. Last night, Steph was letting Blue out for a pee when he started crying and pulling on the leash to go back in without doing his business. Steph told me, right after she heard something big crashing through the little patch of woods behind my house. The patch is extremely long, but only 10 feet wide. You can see through to a field in the daytime. I'll include pictures from that day in the woods and a sample pic of my backyard as it's night while I'm writing this. Also, the weird happenings across the highway was a U.S. military plane that crashed, killing all 256 on board in 1985. And a few years ago, almost exactly across the highway from my house, a car with a lady in it went off the road in a snowstorm and was killed, but not found until months later, due to lots of snow that had melted. So yeah, kind of creepy. So yeah, it's kind of a creepy area. Thanks for listening to what I have to say. I hope it's not too much, and I never tell stories like this, and you enjoy the read. Love your videos, and stay safe out there, bro. Never know what's watching. Thank you, Adam, for sharing your experiences here on Sasquatch Theory. And that is strange that you're still being visited by these creatures. Do you think they possibly followed you back? And what do you think their intentions are? Like I had mentioned earlier, I do believe I interviewed you in the past, possibly, or we definitely talked and communicated. So yeah, I appreciate you for sharing your story, and it was a good read. I got fumbled through parts of it just because the periods and stuff were missing, but it's all right, and we got through it. Hopefully got the message across, and I would like to hear what the vocalization sounded like. A good place for people to find matches is the BFRO website. They have vocalizations on there, and that's the only place I've really been able to find matches to people's descriptions. So yeah, check it out, whether you like them or not. I'm sure they're real recordings that real people sent in, so don't judge the entire people and organization, because I know people that have posted on there, and it is real people. It's a real database, but I'm just saying for future references, in case anybody hears anything, it is a good place, because it is hard to find stuff on YouTube and Google. So that place is designed for this topic. Yeah, I wish I had a database like that. That would be really cool. A giant library full of Bigfoot vocalizations, but yeah, they're out there, guys. If you look around the internet, you'll find all kinds of sounds to help you find a match to what you heard. But yeah, Adam, I really appreciate you for sharing your story, and I think this is like the third time I might have read your story. I hope not, but it sounded really familiar. So yeah, let's move on to our next Bigfoot email, and this next email is from James, and his experience took place at the Ozark Scenic Riverways here in Missouri. All right, guys, let's open up the email and get into it. My son and I went canoeing and camping Friday, August 18th, 2023, on the Current River in the Ozarks National Scenic Riverways in Missouri. I've camped at the same location almost every year for over a decade. Over the years, I have had some odd things happen, but never enough to keep me from going back again. Last Friday night, Saturday morning, has changed that. As we laid down to sleep, we heard a large rock land in the river. It was large, judging from the sound it made. It was a deep sound only a large rock makes. At the time, bullfrogs behind our tent were making the normal occasional sounds. At around 3:45, 4 a.m. in the morning, I was awakened by an owl making a lot of noise from the tops of the trees. The next thing I noticed was the bullfrogs behind our tent. There was something different in the way they were croaking. Instead of the normal occasional croak, they were in rhythm, and their croaks were exact count. For example, 444 333 1 333 444. The croaks sounded like they were being repeated or mimicked. I laid there for a good 10 minutes listening intently to the sounds. That is when I realized that the bullfrog sounds were in fact mimicking sounds coming from the forest. That is when I realized that the bullfrogs were in fact mimicking sounds coming from the forest. As I listened, I started to distinguish the sounds coming from the forest from the sounds of the bullfrogs croaking. The sounds from the forest were getting closer. As they came closer, I could tell that the sounds coming from the forest was in fact wood being hit together in rhythm. 4 beats, 3 beats, 4 beats, 2 beats, and so on. The amazing thing was that the bullfrogs were mimicking the beats with their croaks immediately following the wood beats. 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, for example. The sounds continued to come closer and the beats became undeniable. They were beats from wood being hit on wood. At first, the sounds all seemed to come from the same general area, but as they came closer, I could start to distinguish that they were in fact coming from different locations within the forest. They sounded like they were at first 100 feet apart, then further apart as they came closer. It seemed like a hunting party or hunters were moving through the forest in a formation and gradually spread out as they moved through the forest, flushing and scaring game as they move in formation. It was at this moment that I was shocked by a deer running into our camp, wheezing like it had the wind knocked out of it. If you have ever had that happen to you, then you will understand the wheezing and trying to catch your breath. Up to this point, my son was sleeping and I was awake, listening to everything. It was at this point I decided to wake him up and explain to him what was happening. As I woke him up, he immediately heard the deer and asked me what the sound was coming from outside. I told him that I thought it was a deer and I believed that the deer was running away from the beats coming from the forest. I told him to remain calm and quiet as I didn't want whatever was in the forest to hear us talking. Oh, that sounded like some wood knocks down there. We sat there together listening to the deer and beats for a couple minutes until the beats stopped getting closer. The beats still continued, but they were probably 40 feet away from our tent still, coming from the forest. It was at this point that the beats were easily distinguishable as coming from different locations. As the beats continued, the locations started to spread out even more than before. There were 2 behind our tent, around 100 feet apart. Then there were 2 further out on each side of them. Total, I believe to be around 6 individual locations and distinct sounds / beats. Some would be 4 beats, another would be 3 beats, another would be 4 beats. At this point, the frogs started to fade, their croaking, and the beats became louder. I heard what sounded like a young voice coming from the right side rear, farther away. The voice was just very brief and did not occur again. The same as the voice occurred, the beats sounded weak and not controlled as the other beats did. It reminded me of a little kid trying to mimic an adult. It was irregular and not nearly as pronounced as the other beats. A short time after the voice, I heard a very distinct, quick drum roll that lasted only 1 to 2 seconds and stopped. It sounded like it was being hit on a tree, no more than 5 to 7 beats in a single or sudden roll. I never heard the beats come from that location ever again after that. However, the other 5 locations continued to beat. The deer was quiet for the entire time. I think it was terrified as we were. After a good 20 minutes or more, I heard the deer slowly moving, taking gentle and quiet steps. This area has no phone signal, and I was starting to think we were going to be attacked. So I had started texting my wife as these things were occurring. I thought if we were hurt or killed, that hopefully someone would find the phone and give it to her. That way she might have an idea of what happened to us and maybe have some closure. I decided to start recording the drumming and beats to give her more insight into what was happening. I recorded several, then continued texting. I have the texts and recordings. This went on for a total of over 3 hours. As the sun started to light up the forest, I was praying and thanking Yahweh for the daylight. As the wildlife started to wake up, the drumming started to decrease. It felt as though they started to give up on the hunt, and one by one, the different locations started to cease. It was after 7 a.m. when it was finally light enough, and the drumming had almost stopped completely, that I was brave enough to step outside the tent and start packing up everything. I would not let my son out of sight at all. I made him stand near me while we packed everything up. We finally got everything loaded into the canoe and we paddled off. I told my son, paddle hard to get to the opposite side of the river and stay on the left side only until I felt safe to paddle down the middle. This was over 3 hours of hell. Wow, thank you for sharing that. And the Ozark Scenic River Waterway area here in Missouri is massive. I mean, there is so much woods out there, and it connects to all my other areas that I do research in. It's just solid forest everywhere. Of course, there's towns and cities in between, but there's just so much more woods. And this is that exact area that David Politis on the Can-Am project was talking about, a hunter that went missing near Van Buren, Missouri, down south. Yeah, it was a very strange situation, how he died, and it was just strange how he went looking for the buck that he killed and he didn't bring his rifle. It was also strange how the search party, I believe, looked all over this place the first day, and when they came back, the body was there where they started off at. So, yeah, man, definitely be careful out there. One thing I want to tell people is if someone's making a big scene about just knocking sounds that you believe to be like woodpeckers or like squirrels, something that's explainable, think again, because you don't know what this person experienced unless you were out there yourself. And when you hear these knocks in the woods and they're triangulating around you, it's scary, it's frightening, and it's worth noting because obviously we've heard woodpeckers, we've heard squirrels. Who's going to take the time out of their life to write up a story and send it to a channel if it wasn't anything? I mean, I'm sure people do, but in this case, this situation, it sounded like he had something serious going on around him. Possibly they were hunting, the Sasquatch were hunting, or they were targeting him and his family. But it's hard to say. And there's not very many people out there. If you guys can, make a visit out there and just hang out for the day. There's not much to do out there other than go to the river, hunt, fish, but I don't know. You really have to enjoy camping to visit these areas, and if you haven't been there, you can't say there's people everywhere. There's people all over the woods. You can't say that until you drive to this spot and walk around by yourself. Okay? So anyone who's talking smack about there's too many people everywhere, all this stuff isn't true, go to this area in Missouri, the Ozark Scenic Riverways. I think it'll freak you out. And it'll even freak you out more, other than just being there, the fact that you have no service anywhere you go. And if you get lost anywhere, no one's going to find you. It's a possibility, guys, because if it gets dark and you're just doing a bunch of circles for days and days, it's very possible that nobody will ever find you again, because the animals will eat you up down to the bones, and any little bones that are left, they'll drag off and scatter throughout the woods. And yeah, guys, don't go out there alone, okay? I know a lot of people are macho hunters, but just let your family know if you go out there. And I know the locals, they use side-by-sides everywhere. Here where I live in this county, there's side-by-sides, but not like down south in Missouri, so I walk to all my areas. I don't drive side-by-sides or four-wheelers. Like, everything's a stone's throw away, so yeah. But yeah, guys, that's all I have for today, and I appreciate everyone for listening to the channel. I know a lot of people want to see documentaries or podcasts, but a lot of times this is an easy, free way to tell people stories without having to do a bunch of video editing and spending all kinds of time in front of the computer. But of course, it has its fair share of work. But yeah, if you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share here on the channel, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. If you guys can, please like and subscribe. And I appreciate every single one of you for watching. Be safe, take care, and God bless everyone.